Hey, what's good, guys? It's Clutch Entertainment here, back with another video. And for today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Houston Texans. I'm going to be talking about what I think the Week 1 starting lineup for the defense should be. I'm going to just talk about who should be starting in the defensive line spots, the linebackers, the safeties, and the corners. And I'm just going to be pretending like tomorrow's Week 1. Tomorrow we play the Jacksonville Jaguars. Who's going to be starting, who's going to be playing the most, and just different stuff like that. So I'm going to start off with the D-line first. And at the first defensive end spot, I'm going to say it's going to be Shaq Lawson. Obviously, he's a very good player, and I think he's going to show out in training camp. I think he's going to have a phenomenal training camp for us. He's probably going to be getting most of the reps since we don't have any other guys that are, like, I guess, have a very, very good shot at competing for the starting job. Shaq Lawson, I believe, at this point right now, he's probably our best pass rusher. In terms of like a left end or right end, I don't believe we have anybody on our roster who's better than him in a pass rushing standpoint. So I believe he's going to be starting at either left end or right end, one of the two. And at the other end spot, I'm going to say it's going to be Jonathan Grenard. I have a lot of faith and have a lot of confidence that he's going to come into training camp. He's going to win most of his reps. He's going to have a lot of good reps, and he's just going to show out. In scrimmages, he's going to get crazy plays. He's going to get sack after sacks. I believe he's going to be the second best pass rusher during training camp other than Shaq Lawson. The other guy who could have a shot at starting, I guess, is Whitney Merciless, just due to his veteran leadership and veteran presence and all of that. And I guess because of his contract, you kind of want to play him because how big of money he's on. But, I don't think he's going to start, but, he's probably the third option to start, in my opinion, unless a guy like Jordan Jenkins or obviously Jacob Martin come into camp and play out of their minds or something like that. But yeah, for both of the end spots, I have Shaq Lawson and I have Jonathan Grenard. I believe those two can create a pretty good tandem. Both of them combined, I could say they could probably go combined for maybe around 14, 15 sacks. Maybe each of the guys split for 7, or one of them get 8, one of them gets 7, or something like that. But I believe both guys are going to show out, and they're going to have a very, very good year in terms of tackles for losses, pressures, sacks, all of that. I believe they're both going to have a great year. At the first D tackle spot, which is going to be the Tech 3 role, I believe it's going to be Ross Blacklock. That's kind of what he played with LSU, and he was very good. Not LSU, at TCU, and at TCU he was very good at it. That's where he shined in most. That was like his primary spot, his primary role, primary job. So I believe that's what he's gonna be at, and that's kind of what the 4-3 Tampa 2 is gonna be. It's gonna be a starting role, like a Tech 3, something like that. So, yeah, I believe he's going to have a very good year for us. I believe he's going to be the starter, at least at first. He's going to win the training camp role, or the training camp battle. So, yeah. And at the second D tackle spot in the 4-3, I have it being Malik Collins. He's a very good player. I know a lot of people don't like him or don't even really know who he is. Forget not liking him. They just straight up don't know who he is. But, he's a very good player. He played for the Dallas Cowboys and then for the Oakland Raiders. But when he played for the Dallas Cowboys, he was a monster. He was a very underrated D-tackle presence. He's also kind of more like a Tech 3 guy. Kind of like a Blacklock in a way. But, he's a bigger guy than Blacklock. So you could believe that D-tackle number 2 to clog up the run, to clog up those holes, to take on double teams, different stuff like that. When it comes to double teams, he may not be the best. He may not be able to get too many tackles or too many pressures or anything like that. But he's going to for sure be able to take up a double team, at least hold his own against a double team. But when it comes to one-on-ones, it's pretty much his game all the way. He's going to win like over probably 80% of one-on-ones. Maybe not, obviously not get the sack all the time, but he gets some pretty good pressures. And when he played with Dallas, that's what he did. He was able to get a ton of pressures. On the stat sheet, he wasn't the best. He didn't have too many sacks, too many tackles for losses, or anything like that. But when it came to pressures, he had a lot of them. He was always in the quarterback's face. He was always getting into the backfield. He was a monster. And he's still pretty young. I believe he's like 26. Half of our team is like 26, and I believe he's 26 as well. So, he's going to be a very good player for us, and that's who I have starting at the D-tackle spot number 2. So, the D-line, as of right now, for me, it's Shaq Lawson out left end, Jonathan Grenard at right end, Ross Blacklock at defensive tackle number 1, and Malik Collins at defensive tackle number 2. So, that's a pretty I guess, solid defensive line. It's fairly young. Malik Collins, as it said, 26. Blacklock, I think, is still like 22, 23. Shaq Lawson, I think, is like about to turn 27. I mean, still kind of young. He should be hitting his prime. And then Malik Collins, I think I already said him. But Jonathan Grenard, I think he's like 23 as well. So it's pretty young. If they could all form some kind of chemistry together, it could be for sure a defensive line for the future if they could all hold their own. The next position group I'm going to be talking about is the linebacker room, who I think is going to be starting there. We're going to be running a 4-3, so 4 defensive linemen and 3 linebackers. At middle linebacker, it's going to be obviously Zach Cunningham, the best linebacker on the team. Probably one of the best linebackers in the AFC South, at least a top 3 linebacker in the AFC South. And the whole AFC, at least a top 6, top 7 linebacker. Very good linebacker. In pass coverage, not the best, but when it comes to run stopping or run stuffing, he's a very good player. He's always going to be racking up those tackles. And he's just there all the time. He's there to make a play, there to make a hit, all of that. So, I mean, yeah, that's who I have starting a middle linebacker. At the other linebacker spot, I'm going to have it being Grugier Hill, the guy that we signed. I believe he played for the Miami Dolphins, and then he played for the Philadelphia Eagles. He's a solid linebacker, not the best, not the worst. I believe he excels in pass coverage, apparently. I haven't seen too much of him. I mean, obviously, I've seen, this is basic highlight tape, but I haven't, gone in through and examined him or anything like that. But he seems to be good in pass coverage. Run stopping is not the best. He's not the biggest guy. He's more of a speedy guy. Kind of like a Dylan Cole in a way. Something like that. So, yeah, that's what I have starting at linebacker spot number 2. And at linebacker spot number 3, starting, I have it being Kevin Pierre-Louis, who formerly played with the Washington Redskins. That's a guy who I have a ton of hope for. I believe he's going to come into training camp and turn a lot of heads. He's kind of on the older side, 27, 28, maybe even 29. But he's a very, very underrated player. He really helped the Washington Redskins last season have a very top defense. And I'm surprised they let him go. I'm guessing it's because they want to get younger at the position, but he's a very good player. I'm surprised that nobody else really signed him, or at least had interest in him. But yeah, he should be starting linebacker spot number 3. He's really good at taking out those swing passes from the running back, or any passes out the backfield to the running back. He's like a monster when it comes to passes like that. He's going to go over there, either knock out the running back, or tackle him for a loss, or at least hold him to a minimal gain. He's a very good linebacker when it comes to passing out the backfield to the running back. And when it comes to slot receivers, he's not the fastest guy, but he has some pretty decent speed, I guess, to somewhat keep up with a slot receiver. So, I mean, you could also line him up there if you want, or you could put him as that middle linebacker in the Tampa 2. You could probably put Cunningham in Kevin Pierre-Louis' spot and put KPL and Zach Cunningham's spot, so he could be the middle linebacker. So, I mean, you could do a bunch of different things with the linebacker, and we all know the linebacker depth is crazy. We have 50 linebackers, basically. Half the team is a linebacker. So, I mean, the depth for linebackers is crazy. It's going to be kind of hard, I guess, to predict who's going to start. But that's who I have at starting. It's going to be KPL, Zach Cunningham, and then I said Camel Grugier Hill. Very difficult name to pronounce. In the cornerback room, this is where it's going to be really interesting. Cornerback 1, I believe it should obviously be Bradley Roby. The best cornerback on our team, or maybe even the second best cornerback. I would have Desmond King over him. But cornerback number 1, covering the number 1 receiver most of the time, I think is going to be Bradley Roby. He's a very good player, as we all know. He's a 28 years old, I think, 29, 28. He's a proven guy when healthy. But one thing about him, he struggles to stay healthy, or he struggles to be on the field, whether it be disciplinary issues like he had last year. I mean, nothing too crazy, obviously, but just something minor that happened, I guess, in practice. I'm not too sure. But he ended up getting suspended for, I think the first 2 weeks, or not first 2 weeks, but some point in the season. And then he got suspended for PEDs. So, I mean, yeah, he can't really stay on the field last season. But I believe he's going to be cornerback number 1 for us. Very good player, as I said. Speedster. He can cover that number 1 guy. Or he could cover that burner receiver. Maybe like a Tyreek Hill. Like a John Ross. There's players like that. At cornerback number 2, who I believe is going to be covering the more physical receivers. Like Michael Thomas. Maybe even DeAndre Hopkins. Julio Jones. If he ends up going to Tennessee. I believe it's going to be Terrence Mitchell. A very aggressive, very hands-on, very pushy cornerback. He has the length, he has the size, he has the speed, he has everything. On paper, like his measurables, he looks like he should be a top 5 corner in the NFL. But that's not the case. He's still a very good corner, but top 5, no way. He's probably not even a top 30. But he's a very good player. On most teams, he would be a cornerback number 2, cornerback number 3-ish type of guy. He's had a very good career in the Cleveland Browns. He played solid there. I remember he got into a fight with Jarvis Landry. That was a pretty funny thing. If you haven't seen it, go search it up. I believe it was on Hard Knocks or something like that. But yeah, it was pretty funny. They started throwing hands. It was a very good fight. You could see it. But yeah, he's a very good player. As I said, he has the measurables. He just needs to put it on the field. Like, I mean, he's kind of old. Not too old, but I mean, it's not too old to, I guess, progress, to get better as a player. Obviously, you can never stop getting better. But I believe he's going to have a very good year for us. I believe we may end up re-signing him to a long-term deal after this. I mean, I know he's kind of old, but maybe it's like another 2 or 3 year extension after this. Maybe for some big money. Maybe for like maybe 6 or 7 a year. That's the type of player who I think he is. Very underrated, very hands-on, how I said. He's like somewhat like a Jalen Ramsey, but like more of a man corner instead of a zone. Jalen Ramsey can play both, but I believe he's better in zone coverage. And Terrence Mitchell is better in man coverage. Like, they're both similar, I guess, measurables. Both like to trash talk. Both like to somewhat fight. So, I mean, they're kind of similar in that sense. But as a playing style, similar, kind of. But yeah, Terrence Mitchell should be cornerback number 2. And in the slot, I believe is obviously going to be Desmond King. I believe he's going to have the best year out of any corner for us. Very good corner. Former All-Pro. He can kick return. He can punt return. He could even play safety if you need him to. He could be that dime linebacker if you need him to. You could put him all over the field. He's a very good player. He's fast. He's kind of short, kind of small, but I mean, he's willing to tackle. He's willing to hit. Willing to make interceptions. He's just a willing player. He's a player who loves football. He's going to be on the field as much as he can, and that's one thing I love about him. I believe he's going to be our best corner, as I said. I believe he's going to have an insane stat line this year. I'm going to call 5 to 6 interceptions. So, I mean, this is a pretty good year for a corner. I believe we end up re-signing him after this year, as we should. I believe we're going to give him to like a 3, maybe 4 year deal until he's like 31, 32 for maybe like a 7 to 8 million a year, something like that. He's not a guy who's just limited, who can only play in the slot either. You could put him all over the field, as I said. If you need him to, he could be a cornerback number 1 if everybody else is hurt, or a cornerback number 2. But he's mainly going to be playing in the slot for us, at least I hope. But yeah, and our cornerback depth is pretty solid. We could play Lonnie Johnson at cornerback if we need to, but he's going to be starting at safety, in my opinion. We have Vernon Hargrave still, not the best, obviously, but I mean, it's bodies, I guess. Keon Crossan, who had a solid year last year. Cornell Armstrong. We have a bunch of guys who can be very good competition. And that's been the word of the offseason, competition. And we have a lot of that in the cornerback room, and in the linebacker room, and in the defensive line room. One spot where we don't really have too much competition is safety. The starters, and I believe, are going to be Lonnie Johnson and Justin Reed. Pretty obvious. I mean, the same 2 starters as last year. I believe Lonnie Johnson has somewhat of a breakout year. I believe Justin Reed also has a solid year, but I believe Justin Reed has the better year. I believe Justin Reed is going to truly transform into that player that we drafted him in the second round to be. Obviously, we drafted him in the second round to be a cornerback for us, to be that alpha starting cornerback number 1. But, I mean, as we all know, we moved him to safety, so I believe he's going to be that starting alpha safety. That's what I believe he's going to be. He's going to be a very good player. He's going to be a hard-hitting safety. He can play in the box. He can play deep. He can play zone. He can play it all. He can cover running backs, cover tight ends, cover receivers. Anything you ask him to do, he's just going to be able to do it. Maybe he's not going to be the best at covering maybe running backs or anything like that, but he's going to be able to do it. He's going to be willing to do it. And that's something that we really need on this defense. Players that are willing to tackle, players that are willing to cover. That's something we obviously didn't have last year because we all saw how bad our defense was. And Justin Reed, I kind of already talked about him. I believe he's going to have a solid year. This is his contract year, actually. So, I mean, I hope he shows out. I hope he plays good because I really want to resign him. I love him as a player, as a person. He's a very good player. Fan favorite type of player. He's one of my favorite players in the Houston Texans. Probably like a top 5 player in my opinion. Maybe even top 3 because, I mean, as we know, we don't really have too many, I guess, fan favorite players because they're all new. I mean, all of our players, most of them are new on this team. So yeah, Justin Reed, he's a fan favorite. I believe he's going to have a solid year. I do believe we end up re-signing him. I don't believe it's going to be anything crazy, a long-term deal. I believe we're just going to give him an extra 2-year deal. Maybe like a 2-year, $5 million a year, just to prove himself. Okay, so you played out through your rookie contract. Let's give you 2 more years. Let's see what you can do with that. And then if he plays good, then we'll give him a long-term extension. But I believe it's going to be something like that. And the safety depth is not the best, how I said. Oh, I forgot John Reed. We still have John Reed, second-year player. He's more of a slot corner as well. Probably going to be that slot corner number 2 behind Desmond King. Or he could also probably play safety, like deep safety, like in Justin Reed's role, something like that. But in the safety room, I believe we have Jonathan Owens, obviously not the best. We got AJ Moore. I mean, he's solid. He's already getting up there in age, sort of, like 26, 27. Maybe 25, actually. Not too old. But, I mean, he's nothing crazy. He's an average backup, I guess. Maybe above average backup. You could play him if you need to in that dime role. But, yeah, our defense, on paper, it doesn't look the worst. It actually looks kind of good. Well, from our defensive line to our linebackers to our corners to our safeties. If there's one spot where I would really say we need help in, is probably defensive line. We need a guy across from Shaq Lawson. I know I said, I believe, what's his name? That Jonathan Grenard's going to have a good year. But, I mean, I believe if we had another dominant pass rusher alongside Shaq Lawson. I'm not calling Shaq Lawson dominant, but, I mean, if we had another pretty good pass rusher, I believe we could have a very good defense. That's something that we really lack from last season. And then losing J.J. Watt doesn't really help. But, I mean, I still have a lot of confidence in this defense. I believe it could be a middle of the pack to maybe, if we're lucky, outside of that top 10 defense of ranking. I mean, sure, I guess it's kind of crazy to say. A 1-year turnaround, most likely not going to happen. But we all have to have hope. We can't just be negative. We can't just say, oh, we're going to have the worst defense. Oh, we're going to have the worst team. Oh, this, oh, that. We have to be positive, because then if not, it's going to be boring. But, I mean, from a fan perspective, unbiased, on paper, I could see us being around maybe 16th, 17th ranked defense, middle of the pack, as I said. Nothing crazy, nothing bad. We're going to be an average defense. We're going to be an average defense that can make plays. An average defense is going to have a ton of, I guess, turnovers, ton of superstar plays, pick sixes, fumble returns, fumble recoveries, just different things like that. I believe it's going to be a very fun year for the defense because we have guys like Desmond King, who's kind of a ball hawk corner. We have Lonnie Johnson, who's transforming into a safety, coming into his second year as a safety. I believe he's going to have a big year, as I said. But yeah, this defense is going to be fun. There's going to be a ton of experimenting. It's going to be a fun training camp to see who wins all those position battles. From the D-line, as I said, to the linebackers, to the corners, to the safeties. It's going to be a fun year overall. I believe the linebacker room is going to be the most competitive, obviously, because we have like 50 linebackers. But yeah, just let me know who y'all guys think are going to start, who y'all think should start, in y'all's opinion, who y'all think is going to break out, different things like that. But yeah, that's pretty much the video. I hope you guys have a good day, and Clutch City Entertainment out. Peace.